I'm in a classroom housed in UVM's Occupational Therapy program. I'm using the word housed because on the other side of this room is a model home of sorts, a smart apartment. From voice-activated controls for lights and appliances, adaptive tools to help with bathing, eating, and cooking. Today we're learning how to live safer and easier at home. Good afternoon and thanks for stopping by Across the Fence. I'm Keith Silva, in for Amy Finley. One of the challenges of aging is how to age in place. For many, this might mean hiring a cleaning service or paying someone to mow the lawn. And modifications like grab bars and ramps improve accessibility to make everyday living more comfortable. Today we're going to talk about both major and minor modifications with UVM students studying to be occupational therapists. Joining me today are Ella Croft and Lucy Jennings-Gilbert. They're both graduate students in the University of Vermont's Occupational Therapy program. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've been chatting a little bit before we got started, and the two big words I learned were compensation and remediation, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. But you are the experts, and first, Ella, I'll start with you. What got you interested in occupational therapy?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to work with individuals, and I found that occupational therapy is a way that you can form connections with individuals and help them do the things that they want to do in life and form those connections with them and just to help them achieve their goals.
And Lucy, how about you? What brought you to this field?
It was a little bit longer of a journey, but I worked as a beach lifeguard and got my EMT and saw people really just like their lives change in an instant, and I wanted to be there for the after and help them get back and find their independence again and their joy of life.
Okay, good. If we have any lifeguarding emergencies here, I'm glad you're
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here to help out. So we talk a lot about, and we're going to look at some examples that are on the table here of things that help people live in place, but you work with all ages. This isn't just for older folks, it's also so younger folks too. So talk a little bit about that in the occupational therapy world. You said different ages, right, Ella, that you really enjoy working with them. So what are the big differences?
Yeah, so occupational therapists work with individuals across the lifespan. So working with kids, the goals that they might have are to participate in school or figure out how they want to play with their peers, whereas an older adult is that aging in place, staying at home, and kind of anything in between. There's recovery from injuries, there's all sorts of stuff, and it really depends on the population.
And we said you were both grad students. Lucy, you're working on your graduate project essay. What do you have to do?
We're doing a research study, and that is on looking at older adults and looking at their readiness to change and like how to get the older adult population to add home modifications to their home, to better aging, to lower costs, and enjoy so they can find their meaningful activities of living.
So is it trying to convince older folks or just sort of understand how they make changes?
Understand and just trying to learn. We really want to be client-centered, so we don't want to just force it on to anyone. We want to get to know, like, why are you not okay with making this change and how can we get past this, getting over barriers.
How's it going? What have you learned? Do you have the secret, do you have the magic wand?
Well, no. Well, with our participants already, some of them have just been great, and they're like, oh, I have grab bars. They love like telling us like exciting, like we've already done this, we have this implemented. Oh, I'll go get that. I'll add that to my list. But then others are like, I'm okay if I need it, when I'm ready, and we're trying to get it be more preventative with it.
Change isn't easy, right? At any age. At any age.
So true.
Change isn't easy. Okay. So let's take a look. Ella, get us started. You said you had an idea of where you wanted to begin, so begin.
Yeah. So this is what we call a reacher. This is a really awesome tool as it can help you pick things up off the floor.
Yep, I'm going to hold this up a little bit so we can see it with the camera.
Things that are a little higher up. It can just help with that reaching aspect, which is where a lot of falls might happen if you're bending down or reaching up too high. So this is a tool that is pretty accessible and readily available that you can use to grab
there's just
things.
a trigger here and you just grab stuff.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And you have something very similar, Lucy.
Yes, this is a dressing stick, and so on this end you have hooks that you can use like for your belt loop. If your pants are on the ground, it will help you like not have to bend over at the hips as much. which is great for if there's hip replacement or hip surgery. And then we have the shoehorn on this side, which will help you get off your shoe on and off better without having to bend over as much.
And it's a longer handle, so much easier for getting your shoes in, because most shoe horns are all small, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
I think that's
so
one
it's not
thing that
too
we're going to
far.
see today. A lot of these different items are a little bit longer, a little bit oversized, just to help, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. How about Ella? What do you got up next?
Yeah, so this is called Dysum. This is a really awesome tool as it helps with gripping objects. So if you have a stubborn jar or container that you can't open, this will really help with grabbing it and creating that friction that you need. They also make flat ones that can go under plates, bowls, any sort of thing that will prevent anything from slipping on the counter or any surface.
So you have that pad on the bottom that allows it to not slip on the surface, and then this, as you can see, it's sort of a cup, and it just gives you that. And it's a jar opener. Is all it is. It's just a nicer one, and a little bit more easier on the hands.
Yeah, and they make them in all sizes, and they have little ridges on the inside to help with that friction of grabbing.
All right, Lucy, you're up.
So we have Braille stickers. These are also known as tactile bumps, where if you have low vision, you can put them on your microwave. And so you can just feel and put it on all the buttons that you primarily use, like the start button. And so if you just can't see it as small.
Okay, so just like any other, if someone was had impaired vision, Braille, everyone knows what Braille is. And so those are just the little bumps for you to feel the bump and know where the 1 is, or the start button.
Yes.
Okay. So we're looking at a lot of these items. Where do you get these?
They're all online. There's so many options out there. Even as you were saying that some of the shoehorns are shorter, there's so many options that you can get them more individualized. We even can take some and use a heat gun to bend it to a certain angle. It's really just working with an OT to find out what's out there.
And that's where you folks come in, working with OTs. So when you go into someone and assess somebody in their home, that's what you're trying to do, is sort of figure out what they need, and you're the resource for that. Yes, they can go online and get it, but some folks may not be familiar with online. Most folks are. I know 2 people who aren't, who I happen to be related to, so I'm sure not unheard of in working with an older population, especially now. Tell me about this pen that you've got set up. I think this is fascinating.
Yeah, so this is a tool that you can use if there are tremors or you're having a hard time gripping the pen with the kind of quote unquote normal grasp.
Right.
So you can hold it and just lay your hand over it, and you can write, and it'll slide across the surface of the table, and it'll help keep your handwriting intact without needing to hold the pen the way you typically would.
Awesome. And you've got another example of that too, just a different version, right?
Yeah, this is the universal cuff, and so you can slide it in, and you can also put forks and spoons in it as well.
Okay.
And and you can just do it to the size of your hand, which is
The
nice.
universal cuff, like that idea. In the Open to Our program, I was visiting the Smart Apartment that's located at the UVM, on the UVM campus. And we have a video created by UVM Strategic Communications showing some of the other highlights of the apartment. Let's have a look.
We've had the opportunity to use some really incredible new technology.
So I can look inside my fridge here.
It's so important for us as occupational therapists to be in tune with how the technology is changing and what we can offer our patients.
I think first and foremost for me and for the students, it's really fun. It's engaging. It's a way to learn about different interventions with stuff that they're more familiar with new and current technology.
Some of the technology that we include in our labs here, we have the vector system, which you can do a multitude of things like cognitively, range of motion. You can even work with figuring out how you want to move around the space and utilize what we have in the Smart Apartment. In here we have the high friction floors and high contrast. So the green is warm and the blue is cold.
Adapting it to each person's circumstances, each person's life, how will this transfer over to their daily life, knowing that the benefits of this technology can provide to people's body, minds, and spirits.
The students here really are using things with cutting edge technology and things that we wouldn't have had access to before.
And it's really fun to see how creative OT can be.
So you're gonna do.
We're talking with two graduate students studying occupational therapy at UVM, Ella Croft and Lucy Jennings Gilbert. We were looking at some adaptive devices, and we got a couple of more that I'm sure viewers who saw the first half of the program wondered about, but this is a cutting board. And Lucy, you're going to tell me about that.
Yes, so this is a adaptive cutting board. So with individuals that might have limited use of their upper extremities, mainly like one side, you can put a piece of bread right here, and it also has a suction cup, so it goes to your surface of your counter. But you can put a piece of bread and just butter it with one hand, and then you can also put vegetables and use it as like a stable surface, and use a rocker knife, which helps with grip and using less force, and you can just go back and forth on the vegetables.
When I was in the smart apartment, I saw the rocker knife and I thought, this is how they should design knives.
Yes.
It's just that much easier,
So much
that
easier.
much easier to use. And I've never seen the cutting board. Ella, you had something you wanted to show us for keys.
Yeah, so this is a tool that you can use. You can place multiple keys in here, and they can, this helps prevent you from having to do that normal key grasp if you have a hard time with that fine motor control. So this you can grasp and put your key in and use more of your hand instead of just your fingers to open a door.
Gotcha. Again, handles, grips, things just a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to use, and those sort of fine motor skills. I want to ask you about the video we saw in a second, but one last thing. What do we got here?
That is a sock aid.
Sock aid, okay.
So this helps put your socks on, so you don't have to bend down as much or bring your foot up to you. You can just put it between your legs and then put your socks on, and then you toss it down to the floor, and you can just pull it up, and it just makes it easier with any like hip or knee injuries.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you very much for showing me all this stuff. And to let folks know, to learn more about the Smart Apartment or UVM's Occupational Therapy program, they can visit the website on the screen. There's more about the Smart Apartment in there. And I want to thank the SMART team behind the scenes here at WCX who helped make our visits possible. I'm Keith Silva. This is Across the Fence. Thanks for being part of our family.